So, welcome everyone, and please welcome Sophia, Little Devil from Twitter. Um, she
Hi.
she has not been in a live stream before. She has quite a few nervousness, a little bit of reservations, and I hope that everyone will give her a warm welcome. I've also asked for all of the mods, all the moderators in the chat to please. I don't normally do this, but I would like for the chat to be heavily moderated, just so that we don't get anyone too aggressive or offensive in the chat. I will not allow it for this conversation because I do not want that for my baby Sophia. Um, so Sophia, why don't you introduce us to yourself? What do you do? How are you? What's your life like? Just give us the down low. Who is Sophia?
Okay. So for those of you who are not familiar with my Twitter, um, I am an ex-Muslim. I am from a very conservative, strict religious family, and I escaped that family just a few months ago. Um, some things have happened since then. When I escaped, I didn't take proper precautions because I wasn't too aware of the world around me. I was very restricted and sheltered by my family for most of my life. So when I left the home environment, I was very vulnerable and I was prone to getting taken advantage of, which I did. But I have been able to escape that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And now I am in a safe environment. I am living at a safe house, sheltered, um, and I'm trying to get myself back on my feet and just trying to be independent and get my life started finally. So that's a little background, not the full story, but just a little bit of who I am. And um, the main reason why I had to escape was because my life was put in danger because I was an apostate. So
Yeah.
that is a very big reason why my story is heavily revolved around Islam and leaving it because my life was put in danger and I had to experience so much just because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I speak about Islam. I talk about my experiences. I speak about what's the problematic nature of it, what kind of like damage and harm it causes to people like me, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Um, so I don't want to delve too much because you've told me off, the live that you would prefer not to talk about certain things. So we're going to try and stay off of those topics. I do normally encourage people to ask questions, but I will be filtering out the ones that I feel like you won't be comfortable with. So if anybody wants to ask questions, please feel free to. I do want to ask though, what has your so let's ask about isolation first because I think that is the sort of current crisis that I think everyone is going through. You told me, I think it was yesterday, you told me that this kind of isolation situation is a little like PTSD, a little bit traumatic because it resembles a lot about how you used to live in terms of home. And I actually felt the same way about it. So, do you want to elaborate a little bit on that and tell us how you're
Sure.
doing in isolation in the current climate?
Yeah, so like we spoke about, our lives have been heavily isolated as it was, just
Mhm.
living with our families. This current state of affairs is very triggering in a way, and because it's familiar, it's very like similar to what we already went through when we were with our families. So for I don't know about everyone else, but for me, I was, you know, I never left the house at all. And the only times I ever did leave the house was probably 3 or 4 times a year.
Mhm.
Even then, I was accompanied by a male relative, so either my brother or my father, and I was always, basically babysat and chaperoned everywhere I left. And when I left, I would always be covered. I would have my hijab, my jilbab, and my niqab. I would also cover
Mhm.
my face. So and now it's kind of like that. We're all stuck inside. We can't leave the house, and if we leave the house, we have to have a mask on. It's like, it's really, really similar to what we were already going through before. So it's kind of like, we escaped all that, but now we're kind of stuck
Yeah.
in the situation against our will. So for a lot of us who have experienced that, this is very triggering. And I actually spoke to another ex-Muslim, um, behind the scenes, who also went through this similar thing. And she said for her it was super traumatic because, um, right now she can't go outside, and her ex-husband, who she fled from, was the one providing and bringing her all the things that she needs.
Hmm.
So it's very, very similar to what she had been through before when she was fleeing from her ex-husband. So
Hmm.
she's very traumatized, and a lot of other girls are, have similar situations, and it's really tough for even those ex-Muslims who at least had some kind of outlet when they used to go to school or work or something, just to leave the house and escape
Yeah.
from their religious household, and they would at least have some space away from them. And now they're stuck with them, so it's extremely hard for them, especially with Ramadan coming along. Like, I can only imagine like how tough it can be now, because I've been there. So I already know. It's like, it's crazy right now what's going on and how people are having to deal with it.
Hmm. I think me and you, we have a lot of similarities in the things that we've gone through. We've talked about this as well. You you've gone through a lot of similar struggles, and I do think that your struggles are slightly more than mine. I won't delve into that. I think that is still something you need to discuss on your own and sort of clear
Mhm.
up on your own. But you have had some struggles that are pretty severe compared to mine. How do you feel about where you're staying? Because I have a really weird like disassociation to my home, for example, because I've moved around so much. I don't know if you experience the same thing. How do you feel and where you're sort of living or staying right now?
Oh, I feel that too, because I've been moving around like so much these past months,
Hmm.
and it just feels like am I'm still kind of struggling to figure out like where I am, who I
Hmm.
am, what I am, like all the questions that, because the past experiences, like from the past 4 months or so, to me at this point it kind of feels like it was all just a dream. Like, I kind of just have blurred it and to make it feel like it was all just in my head, and it never happened. And I still go back and think
Hmm.
I had I was still living with my family. Like, that's all that happened, and I was just living
Hmm.
there, and all of a sudden I'm here. Like, I just jumped all the way here, and it makes me like, I don't know how to really explain it, but I think it's the same thing as you're saying, like this dissociation, because I've been jumping around so much. I've gone from shelter to shelter, street to street. I was in a home, I thought I was safe, and then all of a sudden I left, and now I'm like, in a shelter. It's like, where am I? It is extremely difficult to really like grasp the reality of what had happened
Hmm.
and where I am. But yeah,
Yeah.
I do have that too. Like, I don't know exactly what's going on. I'm still a little bit confused, but I'm trying to like, the longer I stay somewhere, and the longer like I have time to process what has happened, it makes me more comfortable and makes me realize what really went down. But when I kept on switching, because in such a short time I kept on having to go from place to place,
Hmm.
that really like got me off balance and made me confused, because we yeah.
I think that belonging is something very, very difficult to sort of establish once you leave your initial community, because you were very much isolated within your family. You were very much kept within your specific community of is it Pashtun Muslims? Um,
Yes.
and I think when you first leave that society and that entire community sort of rejects you and tells you that you're no longer one of them or you can no longer come back, it
Hmm.
really, really does sort of nail in this idea of, well, who am I? How how am I going to be? Who am I going to be with? Do you feel that?
Definitely, so much. I feel that way. When I left, I actually posted something about like, yes, I'm Pashtun. Yes, I'm not Muslim, and we exist. Like, the backlash I got for that like was incredible, because so many people are so quick to excommunicate us just for being, part of them. And this religion has become so intertwined with our culture to this point
Hmm.
that leaving that religion automatically makes you, automatically makes you leave the culture as well, and it's ridiculous because that's just not how it works. Our culture existed way before the religion did. It just maybe it was different before. The way our culture has evolved, through time, especially with this with religion, you know, maybe a couple hundred years ago, before our ancestors became Islamicized, Arabized, whatever it is. Before that, they were very different, and I'm still trying to learn that. I'm still trying to figure out who my people were, who my ancestors were, what our culture was all about before Islam came to be, and I'm trying to learn all that. And even if it's
Hmm.
not perfectly, because I know our culture is still a little bit backwards, and I know there's aspects that aren't, even without Islam, it's still pretty backwards. And I'm not here to say that my culture is incredible, but it's still something different. I want to understand what it was, what it
Hmm.
truly was, and who I belong to, who my ancestors were, who my family were. Like, what are we? And regardless of whatever it was, I just want to understand that.
Yeah, I
And
think a lot of our myself and Ali Malik have had this conversation quite a few times where we do find this strange divide between us and our cultures, even though, you know, in a certain way, our culture doesn't have a lot to do with Islam, like in terms of like Bollywood and dancing and food and music and all of that heritage. But because the majority of the people from that culture are Muslim and will reject you for leaving Islam, you are often barred away from your own culture. So,
yeah,
for example, I can't make a lot of Bengali friends. I can't make a lot of, do a lot of Bengali things with Bengali people because I'll be so criticized by that community because I've left Islam. Does that make sense?
mm-hmm.
Does that resonate?
Yes, yes. Like, I want to participate in the same, rituals or festivities of Pashtun culture. But if I were to do that, it's like I'm completely excommunicated because they say, well, you're not Muslim, you can't be part of this. And it's kind of funny because, say, for example,
Sorry,
oh,
go
hold
ahead.
on.
You okay? You okay, Sophia?
You still there? Did the audio cut off?
No, no, I can still hear you. I believe the audience can still hear you as well.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Was there a cut in the audio earlier?
No, no, it's all good. We just heard you running, I think.
Yeah, my head. I was using Bluetooth headphones and the battery was dying, so I had to
Okay.
go and pick up my other headphones.
All right, no problem. But anyway, you were saying,
So, where was I?
you were talking about how culture and religion, like religion, us leaving religion, it immediately separates us from our culture, and it's difficult
From
to
our culture.
identify with it. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's funny. The thing was we're gonna talk about. Well, there's a holiday called Nowruz in Afghan Iran. It's celebrated, and a lot of Pashtuns take part in it. Yet they don't
Mhm.
realize that its origins aren't even Islamic. They are Zoroastrian.
Yeah.
And if we want to celebrate it, like if I want to take part in that, I'm like, well, you're not Muslim, so you can't take part of it. But since when was this ever a Muslim holiday? It was never
Mhm.
a Muslim holiday.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make any sense to even say that. And then also our people, we have customs that are so un-Islamic, face tattoos, and the concept of ghaira was also implemented in by Islamic culture. It wasn't part of Pashtun culture because the way ghaira is viewed now is very different than how honor, the word for honor was, is that true
Um,
honor was actually valued. The way we honored our women was there was a sense of protecting our women, and also
mhm.
honor was also a part of warfare because our ancestors were very
Warring people.
war warring people, but like they very defensive of their homeland, their people, their heritage, everything. So we were very defensive of everything, and honor was basically that, protecting what's ours, not if a woman goes and it wasn't based on a woman's sexuality at all. It was never about that. If a woman
Mhm.
wanted to be with whatever, that's not what it mattered. Now that's what it is referred to, because in Islam, is protective jealousy,
Yeah.
and that's how men try to implement that now, but that wasn't what
Mhm.
it was originally about. And it's what really stuns me about this now is because Pashtuns are such defensive people, they will protect and defend what is theirs so much. I just don't understand how our ancestors became Muslim, because they were not Muslim before. They had some other identity. They had something else they were following. Either they were Buddhist or Hindu
Yeah.
or Zoroastrian or whatever it was that they were following, or if they had nothing at all. But whatever it was, they were defensive of it. And somehow Islam still infiltrated our culture, and we adopted that. So I
Um,
would think
there
our
is an extensive history on how Persia was conquered. You can look into
Mhm.
it, because I believe it happened within the time of the first four caliphs. So you can definitely look into it if you're interested. But you're right in that, I think that there is this narrative with Islam being like it was peacefully spread and it wasn't spread by the sword. People don't just give up everything they believe like that. You definitely have to go around
Mhm.
and you have to conquer places for people to just change, like a whole nation to
Exactly.
change like that. And it's just a little ridiculous to me that that kind of notion is still there. Um, I
Mhm.
do want to ask you, so there are quite a few questions in the chat, but I will be taking questions at the end, more likely. But I do want to ask you what kind of family, like what kind of family were you from? Like what kind of Muslim background? I think I may have spoken for you in the chat. Am I correct in saying that you're Pakistani or you're Afghan?
Mhm. I'm Pakistani.
You're Pakistani, okay.
I'm
Because
Pakistani Pashtun.
yeah,
Yes.
because a lot of Pashtuns are Afghan as well, or Iranian.
Yes.
So I do want to ask you what kind of Islamic background you're from, and what kind of Islam you practice. I think that that would be interesting to
Okay.
discuss.
So in this sense, we are actually very similar. I am from a Deobandi background.
Hmm.
So my family, they were Deobandi, they were Tablighi Jamaatis. My uncle was an imam, he was a hafiz. His two sons were also, one of his sons is a mufti. I also have relatives back in Pakistan. I have alima relatives, cousins, and hafiz. A lot of
Hmm.
people in my family were hafiz or alims. So I was also the way I went to an Islamic institute. It's
Hmm.
actually interesting. Um,
You okay? You've cut out.
other relatives of mine, they did not have television. But even then,
Sorry,
they had television, but it was like strictly just
Sophia.
what's
Sorry,
that?
you cut out like at the
Mhm.
beginning of you explaining. So if you'd please, please
What did
reiterate.
I say?
So it was just you were explaining what you didn't have in the house.
Yeah, so in my house we did have television, but in other relatives of mine they didn't have
Hmm.
television, and our channels were restricted. We only had Islamic channels and or cartoons for like the little kids, but that
Hmm.
was about it. Like no other things. We didn't have any music. We were not allowed to listen to music.
Hmm.
Um, for me, I went to school or up to sixth grade, and after that, I was homeschooled. Part of the reason was so that I wasn't free mixing with other, boys and girls, and I also didn't get exposed to too much secular education because they wanted me to. My dad wanted me to drop out. He didn't want me to go to school at all. My mom, who kind of pushed that, at least let her do homeschool. If not going to school,
Hmm.
like let her get some education. So we got that. But even then, it wasn't that great. It wasn't a wonderful program, but it was something. I'm so glad I got something. And yeah, I wasn't allowed to go to school. And in the meantime, while I was being homeschooled, I was in Islamic studies. And
Hmm.
the way that worked was there were these madrasas, if you ever heard of Darul Uloom, have you
Yeah,
heard
I
of it?
have. Yeah, I've heard of Darul Uloom.
So
That's a big
Darul Uloom college
Deobandi organization, isn't
is
it?
big.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're basically like I don't know what they are. Are they like an organization or some kind of like Islamic studies
They're an
institution?
organization, yeah. I think it's like it's like Tabligh HQ. Um, it's a massive school for Tabligh and Deobandi.
Yeah, and it's all across America. It's all across the UK. It's here in all these places, like in the West. You would think that they're just back home in Pakistan, Bangladesh, not, but no, they're all over the Western world too.
Mhm,
And the Darul Uloom, like my uncle, he was actually studying there when he became a mufti, and
mhm.
those institutes basically fund these small little like institutions. I wouldn't call them institutions. They're like, how you said that you study in the house. That's kind of how it was for me too. So I went to a
Yeah.
person's house. She was an alima, but it was in her house. She created this little like place where she was teaching, and they were all like funded through the Darul Uloom institutes. So they got their books, they got their like material, they got everything from that, and that's how the curriculum was based on that. But it was inside of a house because they didn't have enough money to actually like build actual schools, so they went and did in people's houses. And the way they taught was like super like traditional. They taught just like they would have in Pakistan. There was hitting involved, there was abusing children, there was all kind of like punishments. And a couple times that teacher, she was also, the police was called on her because of her abuse of children. And after a while she stopped doing that
Mhm,
because she was afraid of getting arrested. But things like that, it's happened like that.
mhm,
I studied there for about 6 7 years. um, we studied fiqh, studied tasawwuf, with tafsir of the Quran. I did I did Arabic studies
mhm,
and hadith. So there was all that. Um, yeah, basically when I was being homeschooled, I was also having all this Islamic studies along with it. And I wore niqab at age 16. I started wearing jilbab at 14.
mhm.
I wasn't allowed to go outside. Like I said earlier, I was always accompanied by mahram. And the only thing, my family were expecting me to do after I finished high school, homeschooling high school, was to get married. So that was their only goal for me. I was not allowed to go get a job. I wasn't allowed to pursue a career. It was just, you're done with this, now you can go get married. So there was always that constant pressure on me about marriage. And just me constantly having to fight them and battle, and or trying just fight for myself, just to be free, just to go to college, just to do things my way. I had to constantly fight them, and in response they would abuse me for that. So that's basically what my life was like there. And
Mhm.
when it got to the point where it was just unbearable, that's when I had to escape.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm just a little preoccupied by the comments. But it sounds like a really, really intense kind of upbringing. Um,
Hmm.
how how do you feel about that? Like looking back, I think that sometimes when we look back, we think of ourselves as stupid or dumb, but it is a hindsight
Hmm.
fallacy when you do that because there was no way
Yeah.
of you knowing that what you were doing was silly or inappropriate, you know?
Yeah.
But how do you,
Yeah.
looking
Because
back, how do you feel about all of it?
yeah. I do feel kind of dumb because there was a point in my life where I had myself become religious,
Hmm.
like by choice. I mean, before it was always my family doing it, but then eventually it kind of caught on with me, and I became religious. And part of the reason was because um, of how the circumstances at home were. Like my mom was going through some personal problems, and she would always come to me, and I would become her little therapist. And I didn't know any way of how to like help alleviate her pain. So one way I started doing that was by using Islam. Tell her like, mom, look, if you have patience, you'll get rewarded in heaven. You'll do this and that, sabrun
Yeah.
jamilun, all that. So I started using Islam as a way to help cope with her problems and also my own. Like, I was also starting to develop depression and in that kind of environment.
Hmm.
So in a way, Islam became like my best friend. I started using it
Became
as
a
like
coping
my
mechanism, huh?
cushion, my coping mechanism, and I became
Mm.
religious myself. So sometimes, I was a very, I hate myself for who I was, but I was a very like militant type of Muslim. Like that whole saying of Amr bin Maruf and Nahy al Munkar, right? Doing what
Yeah,
is
I
good
was
and
one of
forbidding what is
those.
wrong. I was one of those too. Like
Oh,
I was always on my siblings, I was always on their ass about Islam. I was like, you guys gotta go pray, you guys gotta do this, and I felt like, a haram police, but at the same time I'm like, well, this is my
we
job. This is what
were.
we're supposed to be doing
We were haram
because we
police.
can't just. And we didn't want to see our siblings go to hell, and we didn't want to see them get punished. So that's
Yeah.
like why we were doing what we were doing, because we actually cared about them. And that's how I see it with my siblings, the way they are now with me, and the constant Islamic reminders and stuff. I understand where they're coming from, because there's this fear of
Mhm.
them thinking I might go to hell and all that. And I get it. I was one of those. So I understand very much when people, they're well meaning and they want to guide me, or quote unquote guide me, and help me come back to the right path by
Yeah.
using Islam.
Yeah.
It's hard for them to understand where my mindset is now, and
Mhm.
it's gonna have to take time for them to really get that. But yeah, I
I
was one of those. I was.
I think ultimately it will take them time, but I think you also need to remind yourself that they are. I think your siblings are adults, right? Most of them. Sophia,
Yeah,
they are adults.
yeah, I'm still here.
I'm asking if your siblings are adults.
Oh, for the most part, yes. I only have one sibling who's still a child.
Yeah. So your siblings who are adults, and I think that ultimately they will either have to recognize that you are their sister, and they should be able to keep that above what they believe, or you can't really blame yourself for how they feel about you. I think that a lot of the time when we get disowned and we get thrown out and we get mistreated, we like to make excuses for our family because they are our family. I did it for my father. I did it for many of my relatives and things, but none of it is justified, because people shouldn't treat anybody like that. People shouldn't treat strangers like that, let alone family members, especially when we were raised in such a way that family is everything. You do anything and everything for your family. Um,
Yeah.
so I think that can take some time for you to come to terms with. I
Mm-hmm.
do want to ask you how you left Islam. Like what were the reasons? What there doesn't have to be a reason, in my opinion. I feel like people should just be able to leave if they just want to leave. But what were what were the high points? What made you leave?
So, like I said, I was studying Islam for like six,
Mhm.
7 years. During the course of my studies, I started learning things that really, really put me off, because it was surprising to me that those things existed in the religion.
Like what?
Because I always thought that, it was the opposite. Like, for example, um, slavery, and the way women were pretty much treated, their actual rights. Like what I thought the rights of women were very different to what the actual rights of women were.
Hmm.
And we learned about this because there's a whole section on marriage that we learned about. And and it was around the age, I think, 17, 18, I was starting to get my doubts, and they were kind of
Hmm.
on and off. I was always like, trying to not doubt, trying to pray away the doubts, but they still kept on creeping up on me. So
Hmm.
the more I studied, the more I learned about what the kind of, like, the very immoral aspects of the religion. It was what really put me off. Child marriage. I used to think, I used to be one of those like apologists about, oh, the mental maturity was different back then, and all that. But then when I kind of try to really practically think about it, I thought,
Hmm.
well, it's still too early for a child. It's a 6-year-old child getting
Yeah.
married, and then at 9, she's also really like, you gotta really be thinking practically. At 9 years old, I was not ready for anything like that.
Hmm.
So it's like, how do I justify this? And then I have to really think about it. Like, are all these hadiths are transmitted by men, by people, if they're even authentic, if they're even real? We don't even know the whole situation about the hadiths, like who actually wrote them.
Mhm.
there's a different dispute about that. But even if they were to all be actual real hadiths, they're all transmitted by men. Obviously, they're gonna like even the ones transmitted by Aisha, they're gonna obviously transmit it in a way to make it seem like she was happy. But we don't know her story. We don't know her background. We don't know exactly what she was going through. And
I
even
mean,
by her own hadith, there's like some tinge of like like there's this tinge of sassiness where she speaks and it just
mhm,
sounds like she was
she's
not
being
happy. It just
sarcastic.
sounds like that.
Yeah,
Sarcastic, yes.
there is a
And
level of
I
sarcasm when you read the Hadith of Aisha. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, no, I hear you. I've heard a lot of people sort of say that it was the moral aspect that took them out of Islam, and I really don't think you need to justify that. I really don't think that, you thinking that being married to a 6-year-old, you need to go ahead and justify why you think that's wrong. It's just
Hmm.
it's just not something you need to justify. Um,
Yeah.
but what was your sort of initial emotional reaction to you thinking that you didn't want to be a part of Islam anymore? Because it was extremely harrowing for me, but I don't know how you felt
Yeah.
about it.
So it was obviously very difficult for me to like. It was a whole emotional roller coaster because part of me just kept on trying to like make sense of it. Kept on trying to still hold on to it because it was such a huge part of my life. It's
Hmm.
such a huge part of so many of our lives. And
Hmm.
it's not like, like I said, it became my best friend. And imagine, losing your best friend, or finding out that you have a best friend and they're flawed and they have all these problems and they have all these views and like you just can't, agree with them. And you have no choice but to cut them off because they're just so toxic for you.
Hmm.
It's that kind of feeling, like it hurt extremely. I didn't want to let it go. I didn't want to leave it. And at the same time, I couldn't because it was all around me. My whole family believed in this. My whole community believed in it. And I was the only one. I felt like I was the only one who was, seeing through all the bullshit. Like it was all just lies to me. And I felt like I just kept on lying to myself and I couldn't do that anymore. The more I tried to hold on to it, the more I just felt like I was being a hypocrite.
Hmm.
Like I didn't truly believe in it, but I was acting like I did. I was wearing that niqab and still I was still praying. I was still doing all these things, but deep down it wasn't something I actually felt like I connected with anymore. And like
Hmm.
it was just gone. That whole belief and that whole attachment to it was just slipping away from me. And I was super emotional when it just started happening to me, and I was super like, you know, it was like I felt like I was grieving. you know,
Yeah.
I felt like I was grieving the loss of someone I loved.
Hmm.
And a lot of people don't realize this about ex-Muslims. They think we leave it and we just, we
And
just
it's
become
easy.
this happy
Mm.
individual. It's easy and stuff. And they think that when we lose Islam, it's because of losing Islam that we're so depressed. But that's not the reason. It's not like we lost something so great and now our lives are empty. That's not it. Our
Hmm.
lives are empty because that Islam took such a huge part of our lives, and now there's this big old void that we don't know what to do with. You
Yeah.
know. So it's not that Islam was such a great thing to us, and now that it's gone, like we have nothing to live for. No, we do. We have lots of things to live for. There's so much out there in life, but it's just hard to fill in that gap that Islam took over so much. So I mean, and now I'm starting. It's a process of healing. Like so, like now I'm filling in those gaps. I'm discovering things about myself that I never knew I liked or enjoyed. So like I'm starting to do art, like actual art. You know how they say art, like so many like depicting people is haram and all that stuff. But I love it. I want to like create artwork.
Hmm.
So I'm doing that now. I love music.
I'll
I
be
want to learn
really
an
excited.
instrument. You know?
I'll be really excited to see what kind of art you produce. Make sure you make an Instagram page for that. What
Yeah.
instrument do you
I
want
mean, I'm not
to?
that great, but I'm just getting there.
Well, I mean, it's not everybody's got to start somewhere, right? And what instrument are you
Yeah.
learning to play?
Well, I really like piano. Right now we don't have a piano, but like I'm trying to see if we can get like a
Oh, there are
keyboard rented
probably
out.
apps for that.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And we can get
Yeah.
like a keyboard, and the shelter here provides us with a lot of things, so that's why they're the ones who are really helping us like discover these things. So right now I really like doing the piano, and I also do want to learn the guitar at some point. I don't
Mhm.
know. where to start with that, but eventually, and like singing, I'm not the greatest singer, but like, I want to like do karaoke with friends and stuff, and that's really fun,
Hmm.
and just all these like little things that we never knew or had the chance to discover.
I think
But now that we
myself and some of the ex-Muslims here in the UK have agreed that the next time we go out after the lockdown is over is we're going to go out and do karaoke because I've never been, but I've never been to karaoke, so it would be a lot of fun. But yeah,
yeah, it's really fun.
I did want to
Even
speak
doing it at home,
to.
you can.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go on.
Okay. So I did want to speak to just something that you said before, that Islam was such a huge part of our lives. I don't think a lot of people realize, like Muslims ought to realize, but people who aren't, I just want to elaborate on that a little bit. With Islam, especially when you come from quite a fundamental background, from,
Hmm.
either Tabligh or Deobandi, which is where Sophia's from, or myself, I was from a Salafi background. Islam becomes everything in your life. When you wake up, you're saying a supplication. When you're eating, you're saying a supplication. When you leave the house, when you enter the house, when you get in a
Yeah.
car, everything you do before and after you leave the bathroom, what you do in the bathroom, everything that you do is encompassed by Islam, and you're told how to do that. So the moment you
Hmm.
lose it, it's not as if you just you change a fashion, or you change what you like in terms of color. It is something that you lose wholly. You lose your society, you lose your family, you lose your entire identity, and everything that you've been doing, you're essentially admitting that everything that you've done is a lie. And it really is just like this break from the matrix kind of moment. And it's very difficult to process all at once, and I don't think that we're given
Yes.
enough
Yeah.
credit for that.
Hmm.
Mm.
And to comment on that, yeah, like the du'as after going to sleep, waking up, all that stuff. I did all that, and I was taught the routine for everything too. Like when we used to go to the Islamic classes, we were taught how to enter and leave. We were like told go in with by your right foot and leave by your left foot. Same thing with the bathroom.
Mhm.
Which hands to use when you're eating, because I'm left-handed, and I had to use my right hand for eating and all this stuff like that I wasn't normally supposed to be doing because I was left-handed.
Mhm.
But I learned how to do that. And literally everything. There's a routine for, like, when you see the new moon every month, you look at it and then you say a prayer. If I still
Mhm.
remember, I don't think I remember the whole dua, but yeah, there's like this whole routine of how to do things. And there's a 5 daily prayers early in the morning. I used to wake up every morning, um, and it's actually quite crazy. My family would know exactly what kind of person I was. I used to wake up every morning for Fajr,
Mhm.
and I used to pray. I used to read Surah Yasin, all the wazifas, all the duas, the
Mhm.
iskars for the morning, and
Did
then
you do
I
the
used to wait till Isha.
33 finger thing after
Yeah,
every
the
salah?
33 Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu
Uh,
Akbar, that thing.
yeah.
Yeah, I did that. I would wait and I would do this iskar until the sun would come out. And I would, every morning, I would go and look and see which direction the sun came out, because I was so afraid that Judgment Day will be coming upon us any moment. And I wanted to see which side the sun was coming out on. So I would wait till the sun came out, and then I would pray my prayers. And then I would go and pray my prayers.
Sophia?
Knowing that once the sun comes out of the west, no toba would be accepted. So I was always in this constant state of fear and constant state of obedience, just so that I don't go to hell, don't be punished. And I had all of these routines. After every salah, we used to pray some kind of dua. There was always a tahiyya and some kind of wazifa. Like
Did you read
I used to read
Surat
Surah
Al-Kahf
Fatah.
every Friday? Oh, you just said that.
Yes, I used to read that whole it's like half a para, right? Like half a juz.
It is
Um,
half a juz, yeah, I think.
yeah, and it would take.
It's
It will
been
actually
so
read
long
so
now.
fast.
But I used
I
to,
was so like I was.
the
Yeah,
thing
go on.
was that I really enjoyed doing it. Like, looking back, I can't
Yeah,
believe that that was my life, you know?
yeah.
I don't
I
know,
used to
you
feel
might be
kind
too
of like,
close to it, but I don't.
yeah. I used to feel like it kind of gave me a little bit of a structure. Like I
Mm,
knew I had like a routine every single morning, every single day. Like if I followed it, I felt like I was in balance.
It's like
Yeah,
being in the military,
but even though
really.
it took so much of my time, it took so much of my time. Now I realize like I have so much time when I don't do any of those things. Like I don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah, and that's what I found as well, actually. Now the time just kind of the time is so slow. Like there isn't enough things that I'm doing in the
Hmm.
day because before it felt like every single minute of my life was full with something. Like I always had to do something. Um,
Yeah.
and because I think also both of us were from such a disciplined background, and I compare it to like almost like military. Like you're up at one time, you do this at this time, and you keep on it. You have to keep doing
Hmm.
it, otherwise you feel awful for it and you have to make up for it,
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
so it is really, really difficult to sort of, after breaking that sort of breaking from that religion, it's very, very difficult to suddenly wrap your head around another way of living. It's like I
Hmm.
can't sit still for 5 seconds. Like I'm just ADD all the
Yes.
time because I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
um and the
Yeah.
other thing is that we've missed out on so many things, that there's so much for us to do. Like there's so much for us to
Hmm.
catch up on. Is there
Yeah.
anything that you feel particularly behind on?
Oh, I'm behind on watching so many movies. There's so many things I have not watched yet or know anything about on. People comment about it like, "Oh, you remember this scene from that show?" I'm like, I don't know. I haven't seen
You
it,
haven't seen it?
so I'm still
Oh,
catching up.
me, me as hell, me. The amount of people that take the piss out of me because I haven't seen certain movies. I only just watched Pitch Perfect with Saf like last month, and she was like, "Have you never seen this
Oh,
before?" And I was just like sitting next to her because we were having like a little sleepover because she came down to give a speech
mhm.
with me and some other people. And we were sitting, she was like sitting next to me. She was like, "Have you never seen this before?" And I was like, "No, never, not once." It's just, I think
Yeah,
movies is definitely one thing. Music is another thing I found. Like, I just don't know anything about
music too.
music.
Yes.
Um,
So I'm like diving into all genres of music, just trying to figure out what I like, what I don't like. I've been
mhm,
trying to experiment with that too because I'm so
mhm,
behind on pop culture. I have no idea what's going on, what has been
yeah.
going on with anything.
Someone's asked, what genres of movies do you like, do you think?
I really like historical themed ones, like historical fiction. So
Hmm.
like I watched the Da Vinci's Code the other well not the other day, a while ago, but like I
Hmm.
loved that. I loved it so much. It was so interesting and I love Titanic, um, Holes. I
Hmm.
watched this. It was really interesting. So historical, adventure, psychological thrillers I like, and comedy. Sometimes rom coms.
You
So
like
yeah, I
everything.
like those.
We like everything. Um,
Yeah.
but have you seen Gladiator yet?
Yes, I have. It
That's a
was
good movie.
so interesting. Yes.
You see, this is what I found is that historical fiction movies I loved because I felt like I could relate to them because everyone was living in the same century as I.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
people are
I
getting
feel like
arranged married, like
mhm.
the people in them are like old fashioned, the women have like secondary
Yeah,
roles, like all of that stuff.
yeah. But I also like how once you watch it, you got something to like reflect on, and I can go
Mhm.
back and like read up on it. I can like look it
Yeah,
up. It's just something that I can keep myself busy with and like thinking about. So it gives you something to think about. So I really
yeah.
like that about historical fiction.
Is there anything that, I mean, we've kind of moved away from the subject, but I kind of like that as well. But is there anything that you're like scared to try, but you want to try anyway?
Um, that's a good question. Let me think. Scared to try.
Hmm.
I'm scared to swim, but I'm gonna try to swim.
You gotta learn to
I would
swim. It's
like.
so much fun. I mean, I almost drowned. I almost drowned in January
Yeah,
last year, but it is a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun.
yeah, yeah. I definitely have to learn anyway because it's like a survival trait, anyways. But
Mhm.
this
Okay,
summer,
don't
yeah,
think
I'm
like
gonna
that.
if we're not in quarantine.
That's a very me tactic. Do not do that. Do things for fun. Don't do things for survival. You need to
Yeah,
get out of that mindset.
yeah, yeah. It's true. But if hopefully if we're not in quarantine and everything's like chilled out by the time
Mhm.
it's summer, like I really want to learn how to swim.
Yeah.
Um, what else is there? Like, what have you tried so far that you thought was scary and you ended up liking
Um,
it?
I've tried a lot of things. I don't know even where to start. I mean, it's been so last year I would say was probably the best year of my life. I hope it doesn't stop there. But I tried a lot of things. I think I went clubbing and like to like nightclubs and stuff for the first time. It was either last year or the year before. With my then he wasn't my boyfriend, but someone who became my boyfriend. And that was interesting because I always considered myself quite introverted. Like I didn't really like crowds, like people. But I've also, discovered that I quite enjoy being the center of attention. And that's just something, again, that was just something that I was never allowed to be or do. And now
Yeah.
it's kind of my brand to be the center of attention. I certainly want to be the center of attention at a certain convention of a certain person who is in the chat. Sorry, I'm just becoming petty. Something else that I was kind of afraid of was this is going to come as a surprise to everybody was dyeing my hair. I was really, really scared of doing anything to my hair. And now I can't stop doing things to my hair because I enjoy it way too much. Tattoos were another one. You know what? Going in public and speaking for the first time, dancing in public for the first time, like those things were really scary for me, but they also had like this sort of rush to them. So yeah, I would say those things. Would you consider any of those things? Just saying, if you say you want to get a tattoo, I'm getting one
Yeah.
with you because I will always make an
Oh
excuse.
yes, that's one thing. That's you just mentioned tattoos. Like I really want to get a tattoo, but I'm so scared because I don't know. Like it's gonna be with you forever. Because I love doing henna tattoos all the time, but like I
Mm,
don't know about the whole idea of keeping it forever. But I definitely have a couple
mm.
like meaningful ones in mind that I really want to get.
Well, if
But
they're
I'm gonna be.
meaningful, my opinion is that if they're meaningful, you'll never really regret having it because it's meaningful to
Mhm.
you. Like I have
Yeah.
3 tattoos at the
Yeah.
moment, and at one point I wanted to have way more than that. Because I just could talk a big game of having a lot of tattoos, and I feel like I need to, just show some stuff for that. But um, in my opinion, if something is meaningful to you and you really, really want it, you'll never truly regret having it on your body. And you don't necessarily have to like get it on your face. You can get it like somewhere small on your arm or on your wrist or on your
Yeah.
ankle. It can be something really small and meaningful to you. But what ideas do you have?
Yeah. Well, I do have my liberation date that I want to get. This was an idea I got from Nick, Heretical Grey. So
Mm,
she got her liberation date for her wrist. So that's
mm.
something I'm really thinking about doing. I also want to get a phoenix. You know,
Oh, I got a phoenix feather. But go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, phoenix and a butterfly and a semicolon
Okay. Yeah,
and
that's a
maybe
really
anchor.
meaningful tattoo as well. I mean, we
Yeah.
can definitely go into more detail about that in a private conversation. But it's good that you have these plans for fun things. I would heavily suggest dancing. It's so much fun.
Mhm.
Um, and
I don't
it's
know
great
how to dance
exercise.
at all, but like I would love to learn.
You can learn. Like I did it soon after I left my family and everything because it was being offered in my community center for free. So I was
Mhm.
like, if it's for free, then I might as well join. And I was garbage at first. Like I didn't know what to do with my hands. I didn't know where to put my feet.
Mhm.
But now you watch me dance and no one's complaining. So yeah, I would highly suggest that you join some classes and just you learn some basic dance moves and you just groove. It's all about having fun at the end of the day, and that's why I like it.
Yeah.
Someone has asked, are you studying, and what would you like to study, and where would you like to study, in which major uni?
Well, currently I'm not studying, but I do plan on it in the near future. What I would
Hmm.
like to study is pretty broad. I really like sociology, psychology, like any kind of social work. I love children, something to do with children. So I do have a couple ECE units. I might go into that again. And on the side, I really like linguistics and philosophy and cultural anthropology. So anything that can center around all of these subjects, I would love to be a part of.
Yeah, it's a lot of things you might need to do a little bit more considering. I mean, I'm currently doing psychology, so I would obviously recommend that if you you're invested. But it is a little sciencey, and I don't have a lot of science background knowledge. So, and also if you did psychology, I could potentially help you because I'm second year now.
Yeah.
I mean, not to get too big for my boots, but it's all up to you. And you can do, as Saf said here, you can do dual honors, and you can combine subjects. So, yeah. Um,
Hmm.
so it's something to think about. Get some brochures. Get some what are they called? Like those books that they give you with all the subjects in them. Do some online research. I'm sure you'll find something that will suit you. But do you have any unis in mind, like where you want to go? Do you want to experience uni life, or would you prefer to do like distance learning and work on the side? Like, what do you have? What do you have in mind?
I do want to be in uni. I am going to apply for nearby colleges and universities,
Hmm.
but I do want to be working. I do want to have like a financial safety net.
Hmm.
So I either will be a part-time student,
Hmm.
or if I can, if it's possible, I don't know, but I'm crossing my fingers and hoping I might get a full ride scholarship. So
Hmm.
that would be really great if it happens. But whatever, I'm if not, I'll be a part-time student and work on the side and also.
Yeah, it's really really difficult when you have to sort of be self-sufficient and study. And also, the US isn't the
Hmm.
cheapest place to study in. Um,
No.
it just is. um, I think there's a couple of questions in the chat, and if you guys have questions, feel free to ask them. I'll put them on screen. But how old are you right now? I am 25. I'm an old lady now. But how old are you?
I'm 23. I just turned 23 in February.
Okay. Oh, you're like my brother's age.
Yeah. Oh.
Um,
But
but
yeah, we're
yeah,
young. Don't think that you're old. I used to think that way, people. When I
no,
turned
I'm
20, I was
joking.
like, man, I'm so old. I'm past the expiration date
I'm
of being
joking.
married and all that. But
I'm
technically,
completely
we're still
joking. But
young. Yeah.
the thing was, right, when I turned 16, I felt super old because that's how like people in our cultures make us feel. Like, oh, you're so old now, you should be getting married and things like that. Like
I know.
it's really stupid. It's really dumb. So
Yeah,
there
that's
is
how I
like
felt too. When I
that
turned
voice.
18,
There is that
yeah,
voice in the
I
back
felt
of
like
my
I was
brain.
way too late.
Mhm.
Hmm.
No, I think that a lot of us had this kind of rude awakening from such a horrible place. And we've had to change a lot of the ways that we see things. And I honestly don't ever think I'll see myself as old. I think that I'm very childish at heart. I'm very, I have my immature streak, and I love working with children. So I need to have that immature streak to be able to, keep the energy up, keep
Yeah.
things moving, and things like that. But I really do believe that age is just a state of mind. And also, there are so many
Yeah.
things in my life that I haven't experienced that a lot of people experience as a child that I'm experiencing now, and I feel like I should be able
Yes.
to have my little child moment. I do want to ask
Yeah.
you a slightly more personal question, just between you and me, girl chat, right? Um, what do
Uh-huh.
you, how do you feel about dating?
Oh my God, I don't know how to talk about this,
We don't
but
have to.
I actually haven't tried it yet. I haven't tried it yet, so that will be fun to experiment with. I think.
Hmm. But
I haven't had my first date yet, so
hmm.
yeah, because that's something. That's another thing. That's like we didn't have a lot of our first, our quote unquote first, like things that people do when they're teenagers or young kids. Like, we are experiencing all that now. We're living out our teenage years now, so
Hmm.
a lot of this stuff is like brand new to us, and we're still kind of like learning about it. So it will be fun to like see what I can experiment with.
Have you had any crushes? Like, give us the tea, sis. What's the tea?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. Well,
I
what
think
would
you've
you
been a
like to
bit
know? Like
preoccupied.
boy or girl?
I mean, there's to be fair, there's a lot for you to explore because you kind of have the
Yeah.
freedom to explore your sexuality. You have the freedom to, branch out. Just don't make the mistake I did and fall for the first guy who likes you. It's a bad choice. It's a
Mm.
terrible idea. And oftentimes they are people who will take advantage of you. So keep your guards up and
Yeah.
have some self-respect,
Mhm.
something I did not have. Um, have some self-respect and just understand that you're valuable. You are valuable to
Yeah.
yourself, to other people, and don't let anybody mess you around. You've worked too hard to allow someone to do that to you ever again. So
Yeah.
don't
You're
ever
right.
do that. But I do think that people who come from a backgrounds who've never dated before, I've seen it happen to me, I've seen it
Mhm.
happen to other people, will fall into these really sort of toxic relationships that realistically, if we had dated in our teenage years, we would have gotten out of our system when we were teenagers. But because we didn't,
Yeah.
it just
Mhm.
appears. But
We're
yeah,
learning all of that now.
yeah, and you have, and this is kind of the last thing that I want to touch on before we dive into some questions. Please do feel free to leave them in the live chat. Is how have you found the online community and how have they supported you and what can you I know how they've supported you,
Oh,
but like what can you speak on that?
okay. This is a great question. So, as you guys know, when I came back from the previous place where I was living at, and I came back here, the only people who actually helped me throughout this time was the online community. Like
Hmm.
they literally came to my rescue during so many times. Like the first thing was Ex-Muslim North America, for example.
Hmm.
People who didn't even know me, they came and they sheltered me. They kept me in their home. They let me stay with them. They helped me, grieve. They helped me get through things, and they hardly knew who I was. And but just because I was part of that community, they came and helped and they rescued me. And then I did have a moment of feeling, um, feeling way down. I was near suicidal ideation. I was getting there, and
Hmm.
the online community just jumped into action. You, including you, and so many others, they all jumped to action. They all came. They called authorities. They helped me get into a safe place. Made sure I wasn't hurting, and because of them, I'm still here and I'm alive and I'm doing okay. And I came into a place where I'm so safe and taken care of. So I would never underestimate them. I would never underestimate this community. Like, they have done so much more for me than anyone else has ever done. My
Hmm.
own family hasn't helped me. The people who knew where I was, like, I have a family member who knew exactly where I was and could have helped me, but they did nothing. They didn't even call me or anything. So, they did nothing to help me, but the community, the online community, has helped me. So I will forever be grateful to them, and I will never underestimate their strength and their power.
Hmm. Yeah. And I really, really, we're really, really happy to have you. And, don't ever feel
Mhm.
like you can't talk to us. Even if it's like you don't feel comfortable talking to me, you
Mhm.
can reach out to somebody else, you can reach out to Saf, you can reach out to Zara, you can reach out to anybody. Um, I've always had this mantra ever since I left, because this very much wasn't me before I left. But ever since I left, I've always had the kind of mantra of just get it out of your system, and at least you've sort of admitted that there's a problem. Maybe you don't have the answers, maybe people can't give you the answers, but at least you've got it, out of your system and it's not just festering there. And I think that loneliness, isolation, these are things that universally everyone experiences, but it's definitely more of a sort of toxic problem within our community, where people feel like they can't talk to anybody or they'll be looked down upon if they do talk to anybody. And like, it doesn't really matter what background you're from. If you are ex-Muslim or you're still Muslim and you just have like different ideas, if you're progressive or whatever, you can always come out and reach out to us. And yeah, some of us are a little scary, a little sassy, a little bitchy,
Mhm.
but I think for the most part, we're always willing to hear you out. We're always willing to, help a sister or a brother out if they really, really need it. Um,
Mhm.
where we put people first. That's our whole shtick. That's what we're all here for. Um, so I do want to thank everybody who's helped Sophia come this far. I want to thank our wonderful moderators. I want to thank our people who've left some wonderful comments. That you feel free to go through them after the live stream is over, Sophia, because I've told her not to look at the comments. It's just too much hassle if something comes up. And just know that we're all here for you, and we're really, really glad that you're okay and you're doing well. And I'm really glad that you chose to be here with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for everything you guys have done for me. I think just not just you, but everyone who's been involved. And yeah, thank you for having me here. I'm ready to come.
Okay, so I want to ask you something last and final. If there are any questions or any comments you want me to pass on to Sophia, please do let me know. But I want to ask you, do you have anything upcoming in terms of like content, or in terms of like what you'll do in future? I know we briefly talked about you possibly having a YouTube channel, but like I said, don't rush into that because it's a lot. So tell us a little bit about that. Like, what do you see yourself doing in the next 6 months?
I actually did think about having a YouTube channel. I was thinking about either I could keep my identity still like under wraps, like the mask Arab, and like not exactly show my face, or I could do a face reveal, because the funny thing that happened recently is my family actually found out about my Twitter, so I don't feel like I have anything to hide anymore exactly. I kind of feel like I'm an open book, and there's no really reason to do it. The only reason I was hiding it was for my safety, but I feel like I did let everyone know around me, the staff, and they're gonna take precautions to make sure I'm safe. So I don't know. I feel like either I will be public more, or I will just have another outlet or another platform to kind of discuss certain things, like not just about religion, but also just personal stuff. Things about my life, the things I get to do on a daily basis, and kind of like you and other people.
Yeah.
Or maybe yeah, just I'm thinking about it. I'm gonna write more. I do have a blog that I should be getting back on, and I'm gonna write more.
What is your blog called?
Yeah, it is called sufiazadi.com, or it's on WordPress actually. So
.wordpress.com?
yeah, WordPress.com.
Let me see if I can find it, and I'll put it in the live chat for anyone to follow. Is it Sophia Azadi?
No, it's Sufi, Sufi, Azadi,
Oh,
Azadi.
Sufi Azadi. WordPress. Okay, yeah. And it's got like mountains in the background. You got poetry, journal. Okay, all right. It's a very pretty website.
Yeah, I need to fix it. It's still like in the initial phases.
We do have a few questions for you.
Okay.
The first question is from James. No, actually, it's from Afroman. What are your favorite animes, if you have any?
Favorite animes?
Yeah.
I actually do have favorite animes. I grew up with like three brothers, so they used to watch a lot of Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon and Digimon. So I love those. I love Deep Dragon Ball Z the most, and
Dragon
I
Ball
did
Z
watch
is,
Naruto for a bit.
yeah.
Yeah,
Dragon Ball Z
so
is
I
a
like
sick
that
show.
too. But it is. It's the best.
It is the best.
So yeah, I love those. I don't like any. I haven't watched many new animes. I just watched like movies like Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, stuff like that.
Okay, so another question from James. When you were being taught fiqh, were you taught about the rulings of things like hudud, jihad, slave, and dhimmi regulations?
Um,
Bit of a serious
yes,
question.
we were taught about not necessarily jihad. We didn't really dive into jihad because it was considered a man's topic.
Thing.
But we did do the hudud. We did learn about like the stoning. What are the rulings for what kind of how many stoning for like. So I remember for the ones who falsely accuse someone of something, for them it's like 80 lashes, and then for married, no, not married, unmarried fornicators, it's 100 lashes, and then for married adulterers is stoning. So
To
that I
death, yeah.
remember. Then there's yeah, then the Zimmy regulations. I remember, like, what, I don't know what's happening now. It's been a long time, but
Mm-hmm.
I remember them saying that they either have to pay a certain tax, and this it comes out of this percentage of their income. And
I
yeah,
think
we learned about all of that.
dhimmis don't have a percentage. The percentage is set by the emir.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah,
that's the
something
ruling.
like that.
But I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Doesn't
Um,
matter.
no, it's just it's
That's what I feel so
nonsense.
bad about. Is like I have all this like quote unquote knowledge, but it's not knowledge. It's all like, useless, But I
It's
learned
just
so much of it. I
goo.
don't
It's
know
like
what to do with
learning
it.
everything you can learn about Skyrim, except Skyrim is more fun. Like Game of Thrones. Like
Yeah.
everything about Game of Thrones, but like where does it actually get you? Nowhere.
What are you gonna do with
Um,
it?
exactly. It's just
Nothing.
it's just nonsense. Saf.com says sending all my love. It was so nice to hear you speak again. Um, and Amita says was nice seeing you do a live, Amethyst. And we have a message from Magnetron who says, I'm so glad to hear from Sophia, and I'm very happy that she's in a safe place. I wish her the very best in whatever she decides to do." So we have some really, really nice comments.
I can't hear you. What's going on?
Oh, you can't hear me? Did you not hear any of those
Oh, I hear.
positive messages?
I hear you now. I've seen them on the screen, but like the audio just went off for a bit.
Oh, okay, all right. Um,
Thank you, Magnetron.
we have Afroman who said, "Who's your favorite ex-Muslim YouTuber?"
Um. Well, I have like a couple, so like a handful. So let me just go through all of them. I love Apostate Prophet.
Hmm.
I love The Masked Arab, Hassan
Hmm.
Radwan,
You stand.
Mimsy, and Faye.
Stop it.
Yes, I'm serious. I was watching your like all your videos, binge watching them the day I was about to leave. Like I gotta do everything about what I gotta do.
Oh, thank you. That I appreciate that. It's always weird when someone's like, "Oh yeah, I love your videos" to my face. It's really bizarre. Like I can handle
Yeah.
someone being rude to me more than I can someone being nice to me. It's really weird. Um, so DNA Waterbag says, "How do you deal with friends who are in a religious life but seem to be seeking more freedom?"
That's
Hmm.
I do have a friend like that, so it's kind of complicated actually. So my one of my friends, it's funny because she used to be more like liberal and had more freedom, and she still has more freedom. Her family doesn't restrict her at all, and
Hmm.
it's actually more like cultural restriction than it is religious. But she wasn't allowed to like date and all that, but she
Sophia.
and she made herself more restricted and became more religious by her own choice, because when she found out about me and my choices of leaving Islam, it kind of made her feel, I guess, guilty, and
Hmm.
felt like she needed to do something to fix it. So when she became more religious, she started pushing her religious stuff on me
Hmm.
and trying to get me to come back. So, but she's so like unhappy now. I never seen her so unhappy. She's always been this really like positive, happy person before, and now she's just so like
Sullen.
I don't even know how to describe it. She's just so, yeah, like the religion had just made her so that way, because she's like, this life is nothing. This life is nothing. We're gonna all
It
die.
makes
And
you
like, what am I gonna
really it makes you really solemn, I think, once you start practicing properly. Like you take everything so
do? Yeah,
seriously. Um,
they do. She's like, life is so short. Oh no, that so and so person died, and look at how life is so short. We're all just gonna die one day. We need to work towards the akhirah. That's all that matters. And she said, like, I hope you remember that. I hope you're thinking
but
about
like,
that. And it's like,
do you
it's so
also not
sad.
feel weird? Do you also not feel weird? Like you're clearly against that now, but do you not also feel weird that you kind of get it because you were that before?
Yes,
It's really weird.
yes, yeah. Like I don't know how to like say. Yeah, it's so hard to even describe the feeling, but we get it. Like we know where
Mhm.
they're coming from, but like we are also not part of that anymore. So it's hard really to like deal with people like that. I am still friends with her, but it's it's like we kind of just have to keep our
Yeah.
friendship from a distance.
I
And
have a few I have
I'm
a few
still there
friends
for
like
her in
that.
other ways.
I have a few friends like
Yeah,
that
it's
as
actually
well.
her birthday today. I just remembered. I should wish her happy birthday if she
Did
still
you send her
has
a
it, but I don't
text?
know if she even celebrates it. She probably doesn't
Um,
celebrate it anymore.
well,
So
I mean, you can still celebrate her birthday.
yeah.
You're just gonna have to celebrate hard enough for the two of you. Um, Belle Murray says, "Take care of yourself and please be careful and don't rush into anything." And like six heart emojis. Um,
Thank you, Matt Bell.
uh, there are other people who are commenting. Like, I love Dragon Ball Z as well. Dragon Ball Z is the one, to be fair.
It
Um,
is. It's the best.
yeah,
I don't like Super. I don't like Dragon Ball Super. I feel like
I
they
haven't
ruined it.
I haven't seen Super. Um,
Don't watch it. It's just horrible.
Ish, who's a regular on my channel, asks, "Has your diet changed, haram food and drink?" Which actually kind of leads me into another question. How do you feel about spending your first Ramadan not fasting?
Oh, I don't know how to feel about that. This is my first year without my family, so it's gonna be really like
Mhm,
weird and tough. I think I'm obviously not gonna fast, but I feel like I can probably go and like go without food but not water. Like I can still drink water, but just like leave out the food because I really want to go on a diet just for that sake. I don't really care about the whole fasting stuff, but I kind of just want to go and see what I can do about like intermediate fasting because one way it'll make me feel a little bit still connected with my like roots and like what I was familiar with, and also like help me physically. But I still
mhm.
want to drink water and stay hydrated and all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, my diet has changed. I don't care about haram anymore. I do eat whatever.
Mhm.
I'm not drinking anything, at least not now, because
Yeah,
we have
you
regulations
shouldn't.
here at the shelter.
You also
Yeah,
shouldn't do that
and I
alone.
don't
It's
know.
a bad idea.
Yeah.
Do it when you've made like some close friends and you're in a safe environment. But yeah, I was actually going to ask you if you've tried it. But I definitely don't think it's a good idea for you to start now.
Yeah.
Um, James SC has asked, "Are you aware of Ace Jassim? He's an ex-Muslim Pashtun Instagram influencer.
Yes.
You're aware of him? I don't know who he
Yes. I
is."
actually saw his interview with Vidu.
Uh-huh.
I think I'm not sure, but I feel like I have a lot of like these girl Pashtun gay friends and stuff. And when I was still Muslim, they would send me all these videos of these like guy Instagrammers because they were like those type of girls, like they're hijabis, they're thirsty, they're repressed, and they just kind of drool over all these like Instagrammers. So
Hmm.
they'd send me a lot of videos like of these Instagram, and I think that he was one of them back in the day,
Hmm.
and I did not know that he eventually left Islam, and that when he had his interview with Vito, that was the first time I was being aware of it. So
Hmm.
yeah, I am familiar with him, and it's really good to have another person you know um,
In the
representing
public.
us, kind of, I guess. Yeah, in the
Hmm.
public, because there aren't many like ex-Muslim Pashtuns. That's another thing. Like Pashtuns are so intertwined with
Well,
Islam and Islamic
publicly.
culture that yeah, so it's so hard to like break free from the
Hmm.
Islamic identity and still call yourself a Pashtun. So it's really nice to have someone like that on board.
Hmm. Hassan Radwan has been watching us this entire time, and he said, "Wishing you all the best. Take one day at a time. It can be a long journey." And as Mama Faye said, respect yourself and don't feel like you need to rush into anything.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really like fangirling inside right now because that was one of my favorite YouTubers.
Everyone
Oh,
loves you. Our
yeah, he's
grandfather,
like
our
he's
godfather,
like
Hassan
the
Radwan.
father figure of all ex-Muslims. So
Sorry.
I love him. Yeah,
Yeah,
I feel like he's like a father figure for all of ex-Muslims.
he
So
really
it's really nice.
is. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
wonderful. Wait until you meet him. He's even more nice. Um, ask. Okay, who is your favorite musical artist? I think that's what that question is
Um,
asking.
that's a hard question. I don't have a favorite, but I do love um, I like Black. I think his name is Six Lack or something. There's Black Bear. I don't know. These are random people. There's Khalid, I think his name is
I'm not good
C
at
K
music.
H A L I D. And yeah, I love his music. I love Becky G. I love
Are you like
there's
hip
a lot of
hop?
like modern artists, kind of hip hop and also rap. There's NF. He does a lot of rap, but it's really like soul touching. I like meaningful music to be honest, and also like just anything. And I like Bollywood and like Bhangra and all. I like everything. I can't really say I have
Yeah,
a favorite.
that's what I found as well. I like kind of like everything. I do like more bouncy music, like a bass boosted music, like with a very deep doonch doonch
Mhm.
doonch, because I feel like I can move to it. But yeah,
Yeah.
I do tend to like everything. James SC's asked another question. He's asked, what was that like growing up and seeing advertisements for movies and bands and stuff outside, but not being able to ever see them? Did you feel like you were missing out? I was
Yes,
very
I had extreme
self-righteous.
FOMO. Yes, I had extreme FOMO of whenever I see like posters and like advertisements. Oh, this movie's coming out June 30th, 2020, and whatever, all those new things and these bands. And I always
Mm,
felt like like what is like I live like in a little bubble, and I'm like, wait, what is all of this? That looks interesting, but I would never be able to see it. I never went to a movie theater actually. I just remembered I've never been to a movie
same.
theater,
I
so.
hadn't been until 2017. Wait until you do.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I made a lot of
Yeah.
excuses because all of my friends would be able to go to the movie theater, they'd go shopping together and all of that. It's just like, why can't you come with us? Like, oh, my dad won't let me. It's just always the same
Hmm.
thing. So there was FOMO
Yeah.
there, but I feel like I was also really self-righteous and just like, oh, I'm so pious. Like
Mm.
I don't need that in
Oh
my
yeah,
life.
I'm too good for that.
I'm so
I
pure.
know, that's another thing. That is how I used to cope with it. Like I couldn't accept the fact that I was just so damn depressed. So I tried to
Mhm.
make myself feel like I was better than that. Like, oh, I'm too good for movies. I'm too good for music.
Yeah,
I
I'm
got my
too good to
nasheeds.
sit in the dark and watch a movie.
Yeah, like I'm too good for that. Like I got my nasheeds with the vocals in the back. Like I don't need none of that.
Think my one of my uncles used to say like, "Oh, there's so many things that can happen in a movie theater. Like you can if you're in the dark and there's men in there. Like, what do you think is happening in the movie theater?" I don't know what my uncle was thinking. And it's not like he hasn't been to movie theaters. He had a problem with us going to like girls going to a movie theater. Um, but anyway, uh, should I suggest channels like this one for someone that is enjoying some aspects of Western life but is still somewhat devout? What do you think?
Um, I think so. Like people who are like liberal Muslims, I guess, progressive ones.
I think
I've
it's
met a couple
very
progressive.
I think it's very easy to expect that people will be defensive. Like I understand that. As much as we like to like take
Yes.
the mick and take the piss and be petty, like I get it. I understand the initial like motivation to be defensive. But I mean if they're interested, why not?
Yeah. But thing is, I really noticed that it's the liberal ones who are usually the most defensive, and then the ones who are like, it's easier to speak to the extremists because at least they're honest about
Mm,
everything. They're not gonna be like, well, that's not part of this. That's all fabricated. No, they're gonna be honest and they're gonna accept that. Yeah, that's part of our religion. What do you got? Like, what's your problem with it? That's what they'll say. But the liberals, and it's so hard to talk to them because they're gonna be so defensive and apologetic and be like, all this is taken out of context. That's not true. None of that's true. That's unauthentic. Blah blah blah. Like, how do you speak to them when they're
yeah.
hardly practicing themselves? They're not very educated on their religion as we think they are, and they constantly make excuses for it. So it's really hard
Yeah.
to really discuss anything
The
with them.
extremists I found are easier to talk to because they're more intellectually honest. I feel like they
Hmm.
stick to the verses more. And I remember that I was like that as well, so I kind of know the terrain a bit better. But when
Hmm.
it comes to
Yeah.
like the liberal Muslims, it just I mean I've definitely met quite a few who are understanding and accepting and we have our disagreements, but we're okay, like we're still mates, we're still friends. But
Yeah.
there are certain types that just won't stop it.
Hmm.
Um, Another question from Jenai Shiro says, "How do you feel about the wife-beating verse in the Quran as a Muslim, and how do you view it now?" So, how did you feel about it, and how do you feel it now? You okay?
Hello.
Hey, did I cut out? Can you hear me?
I don't hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Hello, testing,
Yes,
testing.
I hear you. Yeah,
Okay, all
yeah,
right, great.
I hear you.
Um,
So,
s-
the question, I can answer it.
okay,
I
go
feel
for it.
like when I was a Muslim, I was just, I don't know how I even dealt with it. That's when my doubting actually came. When I saw this verse and when I saw like there is all that, oh, you gotta like talk to her first, then you gotta separate the beds, and then if she's still not obedient, then you gotta hit her. And I kept on constantly trying to like sugarcoat it and be like, well, it's not hitting hard, you just gotta hit them lightly. But it still made me feel uncomfortable, like just even that. I'm like, why is it like one way, why does the
Mhm.
man get to discipline his wife, but the wife doesn't need to do anything in return? Like, why can't it be both ways, at least be fair? And
S-
then
m- Women are
I
weak,
always had those
men
doubts
strong.
about that too. Women weak, men strong. Yeah, but
Women
like,
weak, men strong.
um, one thing though is that I did see like my dad was abusive with my mom, so whenever like he did stuff, I feel like I couldn't even like say anything because
Hmm.
of this verse, like this damn verse, this cursed verse. Like I couldn't say anything because it's like right there. What can I say? Because he like it's his right as a husband to do that.
Hmm.
So I hated it so much. I just hated the fact that it was there. I wish I could just fix it somehow, but I couldn't because it was in the Quran. I couldn't even say it's an inauthentic, like a hadith or something. It's in the damn Quran. So like, you
Yeah.
can't even like say anything about it. All you could do is sugarcoat it. But like, how much can you do that? Because I read the Arabic. I didn't
Oh,
read it with
I hate the sugarcoating. I hate the sugarcoating. Every time I watch one of those
like
videos, it's so icky. Um,
yeah.
because they're just constantly. Your
Yeah.
phone is ringing.
It is buzzing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I declined it. Anyways, yeah, when I read the Arabic, like with the tafsir and everything, I read
Mhm.
like the verses word for word. So there was no, the word lightly is not there anywhere in the
Nope.
Arabic, in the actual Arabic. And the people who put the word lightly there, that's in brackets, that's just included in the tafsir, but
Mhm.
that's not part of the actual verse in the Quran. So a lot of people don't realize it. It's if you read the Arabic word for word, you're not gonna find the word lightly there at all. It's literally just bita, and the word
Mhm.
for beat is
يضرب.
Izrabahunna, right?
Mhm.
Izrabahunna. So it's Zarbun. Zarbun means to beat. It doesn't mean anything else. It means to beat,
I think it
strike,
means to
hurt.
beat or to strike, yeah.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
you can't sugarcoat that. It's
You
impossible.
you really can't, and it's like I've seen so many people try to sort of weasel their way around it, and it just sounds like justification for wife beating. At the end of the day, whether you're beating your woman with a toothbrush or you're actually having a proper beat down in your home, you are beating a woman. Like it's violence.
Yes,
It there is no
yes.
it's just awful. I don't even want to
And
talk
like,
about
how stupid do you think like a woman is? Like, how like brain dead do you think she would be if you just tap her with a stick? That's gonna automatically make her like change. Like, come on, like be sensible. Use your head. It doesn't make any sense.
well, I think that this is the thing. Like Islam's a lot of the things that Islam utilizes to control people is not necessarily through love and understanding. It's usually through fear and through like obedience. Like that's what there's this reinforcement for is this constant need to obey. And like the reason they say like the beating is like a symbolic beating is because she's being disobedient. Like she you should beat her so she knows she's out of line and she fears you
Yes.
that it's just really like gross and weird. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but anyway, let's move on because it's too dark and deep. Blonde Infidel's here, and she said, "Take your time to heal, Sophia. Time to put yourself first." Which I said the same thing to you
Thank
yesterday.
you. Yes.
Um,
Actually, I love Blonde Infidel. I don't know if you know this, but her husband is a Pashtun ex-Muslim too.
mhm,
So I've been pretty close to them. I've been like talking to them, and he's been like a brother to me. And we actually spoke yesterday. So Blonde Infidel has really been there for me through like a lot, and I appreciate her so much. And
mhm.
yeah, shout out to you. Thank you so much for everything you've done, and keep being awesome.
Um, Ish has asked, "Have you met any ex-Muslims in your local area?"
I have. Well, when I needed assistance when I first came back here, the ex-Muslims of North America were the ones who actually reached out and helped me, and they were the ones who, guided me to other ex-Muslims in my local area, who, let me stay with them. I stayed with them. I went to a meetup with a couple other ex-Muslims, so I did meet a couple in my local area. So it was really interesting to actually see someone in person and meet them and talk about these things face to face rather than over a screen. So yeah, I have.
That's good.
Yeah.
Someone's asked, will you make a video response to Zakir Naik justifying wife beating the man? Had he had a disgusting answer. I don't think Zakir Naik needs a response video. I think at
Zakir
this
Naik is just,
point it's he's like,
I don't know. The only thing I can do to him is just laugh, like that's all I can do. That's my response, like laughing at him because it's just ridiculous.
it's he's such a ridiculous man, honestly. I don't know why I ever thought that taking him seriously was a good idea. Okay, I think
Yeah.
this will probably be our last question, who's from Arn and who's also a regular on my channel. He said, do you agree that when we delve deeper into Islamic scripture, things get a lot worse and not better?
100%. That's what happened to me. I mean, the more I studied it, the more I learned about it, I felt like it got worse.
You've disappeared. Sophia, don't leave me here alone. We
Ignorance.
can't hear you. You there? I don't know.
Hello?
Hey, you
Did you still
disappeared.
hear what I said? Or
No, we didn't.
oh, my bad.
No worries.
Oh, yeah. Well, what I said is that the more like I learned about it, the more I dived deeper, the more I regretted learning what I did, and I felt like I wish I didn't know as much. Because
Hmm.
when I did, that's when I wanted to like get away from it. Like the more I understood what Islam was, the more I learned about it in my studies, um, the less I liked it. And
Yeah.
I feel like that quote where they say ignorance is bliss. That's what I was feeling. I was feeling like I wish I was ignorant. I wish I had no idea about any of this because that's learning and being exposed to all the truths was
Hmm.
what made me leave Islam. Literally, that's all I can really say. Is what when I learned about it, when I studied it, and I learned how horrific and sad and misogynistic and just so oppressive it was, and there was nothing I could do to even fix it because I was learning it like in its authentic form. Like there was no way I could say that this is false, like this isn't an authentic hadith.
Yeah,
No,
you
it was all
certainly
clear.
it's certainly not the religion to pick and choose with if you're going to pick and choose something. It's really difficult
Yeah.
to do that.
So I learned about this thing called bid'ah, innovation, where they say that you can't cherry pick and add things to it. You can't do none of that. It has to be the way it is. You can't
Hmm.
change the religion. So I was thinking, like, at one point, I was like, well, okay, what if I just, what if I become a reformist? What if I just try to be a liberal Muslim? What if I just, try to ignore all the bad stuff and just focus on the good stuff? That's kind of where I was at one point. But then I'm
Hmm.
like, but I can't because that's changing the religion. That's like, cherry picking, and that's not how it is supposed to be. So I'm like,
Hmm.
what do I do to make this better? Nothing. I can't do anything to make it better. It's horrible. You just gotta take it as that or leave it. And I left it. That's what I was left with the option of nothing but like accept all the horrible things and
Hmm.
be miserable and lie to yourself that you actually accept all this, or accept that you don't believe it and leave it. And that's what I did. So yeah, it does get worse when you learn more about it.
Hmm. Okay, so I think that will be the last question. We've been sitting here for almost an hour and a half. Thank you,
Mm-hmm.
everyone who's joined us and left your wonderful messages. I really, really want to thank our moderators for keeping the chat quite PG, and for just for the wonderful messages that you've left, Sophia. I think you've definitely had a difficult run, and we're really happy to have you here. If you have any final comments, if you want to share anything, like your Twitter or what you have planned for the future, please do feel free to share. And yeah, and then we'll close out the interview.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for having me and for letting me ramble on and listening to all the things I had to say. I've never really been in a position to really speak and be heard. So it's really refreshing and new to me to actually be in a place where like people are actually listening to me and
Hmm.
taking me seriously and not just trying to silence me. So
Hmm.
it's really refreshing.
And you've had a good
I thank
time. Like,
everyone for
does this? Remember how I
yeah.
told you yesterday, like that it feels cathartic? Do you feel that way?
What does it feel like?
Cathartic.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It feels like I got like a whole load off my shoulders because it's been a really stressful week with my family finding out about my Twitter. I was like, oh shit,
Mm.
like what do I do about this? But just getting it off my chest and having an audience and everyone just like listening,
Mhm.
it felt really good. I'm really grateful for this experience. So thank you so much
I'm
to
glad.
everyone and you.
And I do hope that you come along and you join us on loads of other podcasts and stuff like that, because I do think that, stories like ours, they often get buried and they're not talked about. Like, yes, we have our sciencey people and we have our really, really intelligent people, but I think that our experiences as people who, you might say that we left emotionally from religion are very, very valid as well. I think that there's something, it's just something that isn't highlighted enough, and it's something that's worth talking about. So I do hope you go on to do, other conversations and other interviews, and you'll always have a place on my channel if you ever have any ideas or you want to come back just to have a chat and share something with the world. So yeah, thank you for joining us, and thank you everyone for coming out. I hope you had a good time. So yeah, I think I'll be ending the broadcast, but yeah.
Okay. Bye bye.
All right. Don't sign. Oh,